Welcome back to the studio. Normally I would never ever open a video with the studio looking the way it is today, but the studio is exactly what the video is going to be about. We're going to be talking a little bit about our environment when we're quilting, but also more specifically about my environment when I'm quilting. I finally did get all of the bindings done on many of the quilts that I had been doing recently, and so I'm going to undress the studio and redress it, and I'm also going to clean it. I had to make a trip, so I've been gone from the studio for 6 weeks. I had to go to Florida to help my mother get her house ready for selling it. She's been living with me for the past 18 months. And we drove to Florida and back, and cleaning the house and getting it emptied was a lot harder on both of us than we wanted. And I'm exhausted, so it's been a little bit of a recovery period. There's plants in here because it was cool when I left, and the AC and furnace were off in the house where I had put my plants, and it got really hot when I left, and the person checking my house never turned the AC back on, so most of my plants were dead and dying by the time I got back. And so I'm in the process of repotting them and trying to keep them alive. But we're going to start cleaning, and I'm going to start by taking every quilt down in the studio, and I'm going to show you what the studio looks like bare bones. And in between that, I'm going to be picking up some of the stuff and cleaning up as I go. But I just want to show you the difference that the quilts make in here. It's pretty stark, and I don't know, maybe the studio will look bigger to you with the quilts gone, or maybe it will look smaller. Maybe it will look brighter, maybe it will look duller, I don't know. This may be a 2-day process for me. It won't be a 2-day process for you. But I've been wanting to change it around for a while, but it really does take longer than you think to change things around, and it certainly takes longer than you think to clean it. I'm always surprised how messy it gets and how dirty it gets when all I really do in here is quilt. I don't do any piecing or cutting in here. I do piecing, that's true, but I don't do any cutting or any of that. My machine is gone because I dropped it off for service before I left. It was getting loud. I didn't know if something was wrong with it. I wouldn't even take you upstairs right now though, because it's even worse. So I'm going to go ahead and start taking down some of the quilts. I've got 2 methods for hanging quilts in the studio. Some of them are on rods, and every quilt that I make has a sleeve on it. And I have shown you recently how I make sleeves. I learned it from someone I used to work with, Jane Hardy Miller, how she does it, and she's the author of the French braid quilts. I don't know where she learned it or if she came up with that technique herself. I kind of remember that that's how she learned, or she did it. She came up with it, so that's how I do it. All of the quilts that I finish that I ever think are going to go on the wall have a sleeve, but some of them I use a clip that is from Command Performance, but currently they're not making that clip anymore. It was called a fridge clip, and it was intended to hang pictures on a refrigerator. I still have a lot of them because I bought them everywhere I saw them. So I'm going to go ahead and strip the studio down. I will show you a couple pictures as I'm doing that, but I'm also going to be listening to some loud, energetic music while I do that, because I have had the energy of a sloth since I've been back. So I don't know if I look worse for wear. I actually am older since the last time you saw me, and I'm more tired. So I'm going to get busy, and you're going to see the studio transform as this video continues. So here we have it. This is a look at the studio with no quilts visible. I don't know about you, but my perception of the room is actually that it's darker without the quilts in it. And I can also say that the feeling that I get is actually lonely and kind of sad. It just feels empty. It's a big difference that the quilts make, the environment makes, to me anyway, and I really like the way that the quilts make me feel. One of the things I used to say when I got to go to market, I would always say that Urban Elements or Applique Elements packed smiles in the applique kits, because when you opened them, the smiles came out in the studio. And I think that that's true in a way, because when you open the kits or when you're making the kits, they're so easy to put together, and it's just like instant smiles that fill you up as you're making it, but also as you're gifting them or seeing them. They're really beautiful and they're really quick to make. But you could see what a huge difference the quilts make in a room, and we all know that, that's why we make them. But taking the quilts all down is the easy part, of course. The next step is going to be me having to clean the room, and that is obviously going to take a lot longer. I have to clean off all the surfaces first, put everything away. That's really the longest. I've got stuff on here still from the last couple videos that I made over 6 weeks ago, maybe 7 weeks ago. So I have to clean all that up and organize everything and get things put away. And it's a little muggy in here because it's raining outside and it's still August. So I'm going to get to that part, and then I'll continue the video once the room is clean and before I start hanging stuff. I do have all of the new tops done with the bindings on it, so we can start hanging some of the new pieces up. You have seen them, but they haven't been hung in the studio before, at least not the versions that I made. So I'm going to go ahead and get cleaning. Again, I'm going to put on my high energy music just to motivate me so I don't take a nap under the long arm machine. I mean, I've got plenty of quilts, so I could do that. But I'm going to go ahead and I just wanted to see show you what the studio looked like. One thing I will mention, I said I thought the studio looked darker, and I'm going to talk to you, just tell you one thing that I've learned about lighting, and this is something I learned from a lighting specialist, and that is, as we age, we need more lighting or more task lighting to see, and what I heard was that every 10 years in age, we need to double the amount of task lighting to be able to see the equivalent as we age. So that's something to keep in mind when you're designing a studio or when you're choosing lighting, for especially task lighting, in your studio. When I designed this room, when I was putting it together, I put a lot of lights in the ceiling. People thought I had way too many, and now I wish I had doubled even what I have now. Maybe put 2 switches, so I could have had only one on back then, but both on now. But for me, this studio is coming to it's close to its end of existence for me. I think soon I'll be looking for a new studio, but that's a topic for another day. I'm going to go ahead and get busy cleaning, and I'll pull you back in when I've cleaned myself up after getting to work. I think because I'm sweaty, my glasses are all fogging up. One of the other things I'm doing, one, because I just had a birthday, but 2, because I'm going through the studio, I have 2 fire extinguishers in the studio, and there's 2 important reasons. One, well, maybe 3, maybe 4. I have a gas stove out here. I don't use it, but it is out here. I also have a gas heater on the wall. Again, I have it, but I don't usually use it. The gas is on. So that's one reason, good reason to have a fire extinguisher. Number 2, I have a lot of electronics out here, and lightning could strike at any time. Number 3, I have 2 ways to get out of the building. but a fire extinguisher could save your life if you need to create an escape path just long enough to get out of a building. And number three, a small fire could be extinguished if you get at it quick enough. And so I have two fire extinguishers here in the room. So because it was my birthday recently, I'm checking both to make sure that they're still fully charged. And it's really easy because the arrow just has to point to the green. And I will tell you a quick story. A couple of years ago, I was making something in the microwave and I heard popping, which sometimes you hear the microwave dinner popping in the microwave. But it was really loud. So I went over and listened, and it wasn't from the microwave. It seemed like it was coming from the basement. And I opened the basement door, and it was coming from my electric box. And so I went down, and it was sparking and catching on fire. So I was going to go down and shut off the breaker, but I didn't have a flashlight. So I ran all the way up to the third floor to get my flashlight. And then I came back downstairs and I grabbed a wooden handle and I turned the main breaker off, and it continued to spark and fire. So then I ran up and got a fire extinguisher and called 911 because I knew it wasn't going to go out on its own. And I was able to keep the fire under control until the fire department got there. It wouldn't have gone out because it was a short between the outside of the house and the inside of the house. All the way down the block, the transformers were blowing out. So that's how powerful that electrical short was. It would have killed me if I had touched it, but fortunately I didn't. But a fire extinguisher can save your life. So I have one in every bedroom. I have one in the kitchen, the laundry room, and I've got multiple ones here in the carriage house. It's also time to check the smoke detector. This is a CO detector and a smoke and CO2. And again, because I have gas out here, I have a CO detector. And these used to be that you had a battery in it and you had to change the battery on your birthday. Well, this one doesn't have a battery. This one just has a light in it. It has some kind of a battery, but it's not one you change. And this one has, if it beeps, 3 beeps, or it's a smoke alarm, 4 beeps, it's a CO2 alarm, and you have to take it off and read it to tell you what is going on. 1 beep per minute is replace the alarm, 3 beeps per minute is a malfunction, and 5 beeps per minute is the end of the life signal of the unit. So there are instructions on the back of some of them. Of course, they're all going to be different, but this will tell you what it's going to sound like. At least I know that this unit is still working, so I'm going to go ahead and put that back on the wall. But I would urge everyone to make sure that you do have fire extinguishers in your studio, because we have a lot of money invested in them, a lot of money, between the fabric, which is very flammable, and all of the electronics. So that's my sermon for fire extinguishers and CO2 smoke detectors. As you can see, after I mop the floor, I'm just putting the furniture back the way it was because I don't have time to try and reconfigure the room that much. And also, I've tried it a couple times before, and really this setup is really the best configuration there is for this room. I would want to put that presentation table over there because I like the quilts behind me, and there's no way to hang quilts over the window. And I like to have something for you guys to look at besides me as I'm standing here talking. But now that I'm talking about the floor, I have the floor swept and mopped, and I have the furniture back, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the floor. The floor in here is a concrete slab. This building was built in the late 1800s, and it originally is a carriage house. A carriage house is where they used to put the horses and the carriages back in the horse and buggy days. This particular one had 2 large barn doors on that back wall, and the back wall only had 1 pole in the middle, and the rest of it was all barn doors. And I took those out when I moved here, and I put the wall in the back. But I also, there was a concrete slab, but I also had the floor leveled, and ceramic tile put down, but the floor is very hard. So the first thing I would mention is that I have anti-fatigue mats down, and I have those anywhere that I would stand for more than a few minutes. So there's one right here behind this table, and there's two of them that run the full length of the long arm machine in the front, and there's two of them that run the full length of the table in the back. My long arm machine is set up to do pantos, so that's why I have them in the back. And the machine is also set up to do both computerized work and free motion work in the front. So anti-fatigue mats really come in handy if you're doing any of those things and you have a hard floor. They really can take the pain out of standing for long periods of time, and that's in your feet, your knees, your back, your neck, and it makes a huge difference. It's a one-time investment, and they're really easy to care for, so I would recommend those. Another thing I found, and this is from taking care of my mom, she has these all over, and these are little grabbers. They have these at most places where you get things for seniors, like grab bars or, you know, handicap accessories, but this is just something that they reach things with. But I found this really comes in handy in this, well, just from watching her, but I a lot of times would prefer to pick these things up off the floor with this than have to bend over. I have to take a medication that makes me dizzy sometimes if I stand up too quick, so it's really kind of nice to have these to pick something up off the floor, and that way I don't get dizzy every time I stand up too fast. But the other thing is, the long arm machine is kind of hard to get something out from under the middle of it, and if you drop a bobbin case or a spool of thread goes spinning underneath of it, or the bobbin itself, this could come in really handy to reach something that's right in the middle underneath the table. And the last thing I'm going to talk about that's floor related is this stick vacuum cleaner. I have a broom and a dustpan, and I have a regular vacuum cleaner that I use out here, and I use a Swiffer also. The Swiffer's great because once you're done, you just peel off that pad and throw it away. I like those things. But I recently got a stick vacuum. I don't even know what brand it is. I just ordered it online. But the nice thing is about this, when I have the long threads on the floor, which I have all the time, this just sucks them up and they don't get caught in the brush of the vacuum cleaner, and I don't have to go back later and cut that all off. So I've really found this really useful. It doesn't stop up my vacuum cleaner, and it only takes a few minutes to clean up the floor with this, and I can spot treat without having to drag the vacuum cleaner out and get all the cord out. It's also really good for getting cobwebs up off the ceiling. So these are my floor things that I'm going to talk about as I'm putting this stuff back. So I'm going to continue cleaning as I go. I still have that side and back behind you, but that's my floor stuff and my back stuff. So everything is back the way it is going to be over here, and I'm just going to continue on. Well, I got my machine back today. I drove up to my local Bernina dealer and picked that up. I had it serviced. So it's back in the machine in the cabinet, and it's ready to go. And the next thing I think I'm going to do is recover my ironing board. Last time I did it in white. This is a tackle twill fabric. And the white didn't last me very long. It looked pretty good, but I'm not the neatest person in the world, and the white didn't even last 2 weeks before I had it dirty. I'm going to try black just because I think it might stay clean longer, but I'm not sure how it's going to show up with everything that I do. So I'm going to test it out. If the black doesn't work, then I'll go ahead and trade that out again in a couple weeks to maybe a light gray to see how that does. So that is what I'm going to do next, but I'm not going to bore you with how I do that. I'm just going to cut this to size and staple it on. I was lucky though, because I got this black tackle twill from my local quilt guild. Somebody had gotten it and they did need it, so it was on the free table. So that was a yay for me thing. But to talk about my ironing board, I will tell you, I started out like everybody else with a regular ironing board. And one of the things most quilters find out very quickly is that you can't iron a full width of fabric on a regular iron and have room for your iron itself and the spray starch or whatever you're using. So shortly after I got my ironing board, I was looking for an alternative, and I found the big board, which is some piece of wood that's covered in something and fabric, and it goes on top of your ironing board. And that was working great for a while. You could open up your fabric and iron it with my iron and starch or spray or whatever you use. And a couple times my whole ironing board collapsed because of the weight of it. And so I got heavy duty ironing boards, and they collapsed as well. Maybe I pressed too hard, maybe it was the weight of the board. Anyway, I soon realized that sometimes we buy things that were geared towards quilters, like ironing boards, some of the furniture and stuff, but it doesn't always necessarily work out the best. So I started looking at things that were geared more towards men, for the garage, for mechanic work and stuff like that, and that's where I got into using these Husky tool benches and tool drawers. And so basically that's what this is. It's just a workbench, tool bench. And I didn't do anything else to it. I just bought a piece of wood and I covered it. I bought one of those wool mats, and it's just laid on top of it, and then I covered it in fabric. And every time I covered, I just put another cover over top of it. This is never going to collapse. I can sit on it. Even when I was at my heaviest weight, I could sit on it. It's not going to go anywhere. So that's one of the things I've learned. The other thing I learned about my iron, I've paid a lot of money for irons over the last 30 years. I've had a commercial iron. I've had really expensive roll-into irons. The problem is that I've got nerve damage in my feet, and I don't always feel things when I'm walking. And I always inevitably will trip over a cord and yank my iron off of the ironing surface, and it will hit the floor. As soon as I do that, I break the seal on the iron. And so no matter how much the iron costs, it's going to start leaking. So now I just buy less expensive irons, as long as they heat up good, and I don't put water in the iron. I just keep a spray bottle, which I have many of, and I keep water in some, and I keep any of those spray starches, liquids in the other. Sometimes I keep 2 or 3 with different smells in them, and I use those. I don't keep any water in the iron. If I don't keep water in the iron, it can never leak. It will never sputter. It will never self-clean right in the middle of me doing a project. It's not going to rust. It's not ever going to get anything on my fabric because of a self-cleaning or because there's rust all of a sudden coming out. So I don't have to worry about having a very expensive iron. When the cheap one breaks, I just get rid of it. I just never ever put water in it. Using a spray bottle works just as good as having a really good steam. It steams when you spray it on the fabric, and works just as good for me. So those are 2 things I've learned about ironing and ironing boards, and I'm just passing that along. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this to fit. It's just laying on here right now, and then I'm going to get this stapled on, and then after we get that done, I'm going to go ahead and start hanging quilts back up. It has been a couple days because I've had doctor's appointments and running out of town to pick up my machine, and a couple other interruptions since I've been back from Florida. But we're going to get this finished up. Once I start hanging the quilts, it will go a little bit faster. I also have to get my tablet back on the Bernina, and a couple other things. Behind the camera is still a little bit of a mess, but once the quilts start going up, some of that will get filtered back out and it will be cleaner. But I will show you that too. Even if it's still messy, I'll show you what it looks like. So I'll get going. In the back, I still have the dog park and alley cat. I did switch those from one of the other walls. And on the next to that, we have two of the Dresden plate. One of them is the Boutique and the other one is the Dots. And the spring pedal power is probably the only thing that I'm not really happy about the colorway. It doesn't really match the color story in that particular place, but it's the only thing that covers that TV really well. So I may look for something else there, but for the meantime I'm just going to leave that. Over on this side wall I have kind of a teal color story going. We have the Road Trip and the Mama Goat. The Mama Goat, we just got the binding and sleeve on, and I really love the quilting pattern on both of those, so I like those over there. I have my sewing machine back, so it's back in its cabinet, and we have the new growth chart up in ombre orange, and that kind of brings in the color story over here. So I have the Halloween up behind me because basically that is the next holiday that we have coming up here in the studio. In the past, basically what I've had is the feeling of everything all at once everywhere, and I haven't hung quite as much stuff now. It has a little bit more breathing room, and also that's going to give me the opportunity to kind of switch things out for a season. So right now I have some autumn things up, and then after that I can go ahead and put some of the Christmas, Thanksgiving stuff up, and then after the holidays then I can go ahead and put some spring stuff up. So that is my plan for the time being. Also, we got the ironing board covered in a new black tackle twill. So we're going to see how that reads when I'm doing some of the things on this board, mostly the applique. If it doesn't read well, then we'll go ahead and switch it out maybe to a lighter gray. But the white was really hard because I'm messy to keep it clean, and it didn't read very well dirty like that, and I'm just not a really neatnik. So I've kind of stretched this out a few more days than I intended to. It's just taken me a while to get back into the swing, and I have other things I need to get done. I was going to try and show you the behind there, but it still isn't really very clean. I'm going to try and get to that a little bit each day over the next week or so, but I have to get busy on doing a couple other things. I have 2 quilts I have to load, and that's going to be exciting because those are from one of the team members of Urban Elements, and I've been wanting to do that. Have some of the people who work for Urban Elements and design for Urban Elements send in some of their quilts and also that they've designed. So that's going to be exciting. So that's something we could look forward to. Anyway, thanks for stopping by the studio today. I hope some of the information was informative, and we look forward to seeing you again next time right back here at the Urban Elements studio.